The Jaguars are coming off a conference or a division title in 2022. A lot of people hadn't seen that coming. I think a lot of Jaguars fans are really, really excited for the upcoming season for 2023 with some key additions. They should be in place to win it again, if not take another step in the playoffs this year. Got our man Tony Wiggins from Locked On Jaguars to break all this down, talking all things Jaguars today. Let's get into it. So, Tony, thank you for joining Big B Sports Talk, man. I appreciate you taking the time, man, to join us today.
No doubt, man. I'm glad to be here, brother.
Thank you. So let's just get into this, man. Last year, Jaguars win the division. I don't know that a lot of people saw that coming. Obviously, the team got better. You did see it coming. See, a lot of people did not see it coming, but they were good. They were good. They had a good team. I think a lot of people, they just don't follow and pay attention to the Jags, and they had a good team, man. So, in the nature of that, tell me what the city's feeling like. What's the atmosphere around Jacksonville right now, man?
A lot of positivity, but it's cautious, and that's because let me first, to answer that question, let me go back to last year.
Okay.
Last year was the first year under Doug Peterson. The year before, there was the same enthusiasm because they had finally gone outside of the organization. And what I mean by that is when they fired Gus Bradley, all they did was promote Doug Marrone.
Right.
And they kept, it's like for the last 10 years or so, every time they made a change, they just kept promoting people. They didn't really start over. And we all want that fresh start, other than if you're a Steelers fan, because the Steelers, I tell people this all the time, and it's like the most amazing, and really it is the most amazing thing I've ever seen in sports.
Right.
I'm 54 years old. The Steelers have had 3 coaches in my life.
Yeah.
That's buck wild when you think about it, right? And even when they replaced Cowher, the final 2 candidates were Ken Whisenhunt and of course the coach they have now is Mike Tomlin. And 2 years after they replaced Tomlin, Ken Whisenhunt and Mike Tomlin meet in the Super Bowl. So it's like even when they got it right, they could have got it right if they'd gone the other way too, seemingly back then. So for us, it's always been a situation where I really wanted them to just start over, and they never did. So they finally did, and then they had the ultimate, what I thought was going to be like Jimmy Johnson, a delegator of authority who would take the blame for everything because we didn't have that before. Guys were pointing the finger at each other. The ultimate, look, whatever goes wrong, it's on me. Whatever goes right, you're going to give me the credit, but whatever goes wrong, it's on me. And Urban Meyer came in and did the absolute opposite. Yeah. He was a petulant child. He was, I'll call him King Joffrey. He's like Joffrey Baratheon from Game of Thrones. It was worse. I can't even describe to you how bad it was. And we all knew it from the very beginning. And so when they started fresh again, like 12 months after the initial first start, after all of the enthusiasm is gone, people were just happy Urban Meyer was gone. And now that hope and that enthusiasm is, people look at it funny. They're like, okay, let's see what happens here. You know what I'm saying? Doug Peterson did win a Super Bowl, but they fired him 3 years after he won it. And now the Eagles are competitive again. So what's the deal? But as it turns out, it was a match made in heaven with Doug Peterson and Trevor Lawrence, because I often talk about quarterback and coach combinations. You guys had that with Cowher and Roethlisberger and Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson and all of the combinations, Belichick, Brady, and Dungy, and man, every time you look up and there's a team that makes a run, Andy Reid and Mahomes, they're connected. And it's like great coach, great quarterback, and they're together. We started to see that last year, and then they hit a bump in the road. And at some point, they were 2-7. So even my enthusiasm, the guys on my network, they crushed me. They were like, "You predicted they were going to win a division, and they're 2-7, right?" So then they go in the last 8 games, and they win 7 out of the last 8. And it happened. It happened. And now because it happened, we believe that it's going to continue.
Gotcha. Makes sense. And you know, tying that all into what I'm about to ask you, you know, with coaches and quarterbacks all being connected, you know, adding certain pieces, you know, getting a Calvin Ridley, you know, to go along with this offense. How good can Trevor Lawrence and this offense be this year?
It could be very good. last year, because of some injuries along the offensive line, they had to go to a really quick passing game. Trevor's best when he has a smorgasbord of options, meaning
Right.
he can go downfield. They added some guys last year in Christian Kirk and Zay Jones and Evan Ingram that provided separation. Even if you didn't consider those guys great players, they were sort of like those guys the Steelers have, the
Yeah.
Deontay's and all those guys. They just provide separation. And with a great quarterback, all he needs is a little bit of a window. And those guys gave it to him last year, but the offensive line had 2 critical injuries on the left side, so they had to really go to a quick passing game. And the running back, Travis Etienne, had missed the entire season. So for a young guy, that's very critical because coming in as a rookie is one thing, but coming in as a guy who never played a down and had to come back off of an injury was another thing. And I think it just took them a while to find their footing. But once they did, they really, really, really took off.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you mentioned those injuries on the offensive line, and you've got a suspension coming up this year. Tell me a little bit about that because, it was my take as a former college offensive lineman, 100 million years ago. I think this is just my opinion. I think the Jaguars got better. I think he may be a better left tackle coming in than what you have. Am I wrong? Am I thinking outside the box there?
Are you talking about the draft pick?
Yes.
Okay, well, he's going to play right tackle because they lost Jawan Taylor. He signed an $80 million deal to go to Kansas
That's right.
City.
He went to Kansas City.
Right. So I'm with you, though. That line of thinking would be I wanted them to re-sign Jawan and still draft another lineman because I just think to be really, really good in this league for a long period of time, I didn't think this way before. I thought, no, we can find a guy. No, you cannot.
No, you can't, man.
No.
Trust me, I'm a Steelers fan. I know.
Yeah. And now because of what you guys have been going through. But
yeah.
It always felt like the good teams, because for me, it always felt like the good teams when they lost guys in free agency, they all the Hudson Houck Dallas Cowboys, they always could plug somebody in, right?
Right.
But it only gets that way because of what they invest initially. The Jaguars went like 4 years and they drafted 5 offensive linemen. I'm of the thinking that you need to draft at least 1 or 2 every year. I think 2 years, you need to draft 3.
Yeah.
Over a 4-year period, you need to draft 6.
Yeah.
Because you always need to have those guys in development that can step in and play at the blink of an eye. And then if you have to make a move in a trade, you trade one and you got another guy, he's ready to go. The bottom line is, I don't think it's ideal that he got suspended because, one, he's a $22 million cap hit, so he's not easily replaced. 2, the good thing about his suspension is he gets a chance to he's going to play training camp in the preseason, so they'll get an early look at what it'll be like in week 5. Now, do they have enough to get by through week 1 through 4? Yeah, but they might put themselves in a bit of a conundrum because Walker Little is the swing tackle. If he plays left tackle and plays well, and the right tackle is Anton Harrison, the number 1 pick, and if he plays well, what do you do with Cam Robinson when he comes back at $22 million, a guy that has never in his life taken a snap at guard, ever? And what if the left guard's playing well? And I'm speaking to the choir because you're a former offensive lineman. I always talk about the C's: cohesion, continuity. I can't even think of what they are right now because it's too late in the day, but it's like cohesion, continuity, consistency, and one other. I call them the 4 C's. And the offensive line has to look like the 4 Tops and the Temptations.
Absolutely.
They got to be in step, bro. And one bad player on that line can make that entire group look ugly. And
well, you're 100% correct. I didn't mean to cut you off. I live here in Dallas, and the Cowboys offensive line kind of went through that last year with the whole issues. Is Tyron Smith goes out, and Tyron Smith, the rookie, comes in and plays well. And then it's like, now look, we got this Hall of Fame guy that, has been hurt, don't get me wrong, the last few years, but he, just like you mentioned, he's never played anywhere else. And they tried to put him on the right side last year, and that did not, he looked horrible. Looked horrible. So you are 100% right as far as cohesion and all of that. It's just like, what do you do, with a guy that's making 20, or, is a $22 million hit, but if the other guys are playing well, it's like, do you just take them out? It's tricky, man. It's tough. It's
And
tough.
then Coach Roush, Phil Roush, has a very good reputation. He trained under Bill Callahan, who's one of the best over the last 30 years in the NFL. The thing is, man, they always talk about we just need to get our 5 best guys on the field. We'll figure out the positions, right? So if that's the case, and he comes back and he's one of your best 5, but the unit is playing well, then what do you do? What do you do? So, I mean, it's a good problem to have, assuming that everybody's going to be playing well. And if they're not playing well, it's even a better thing that he comes back, especially, coming off of an injury. He had a patella injury last year. He's coming back, but I think he'll be fine. I think he'll be okay. It's not ideal when you're trying to elevate. And that's the biggest difference. And that's something I know we'll get into a little bit. The biggest difference is it's one thing to be competitive. It's another thing to go beat Buffalo, Cincinnati, and Kansas City, and to advance. That's a whole nother level, Big B. You know it. That's a whole. It's one thing to go out every week and be able to hold your own. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about a team that has expectations of elevating. So when you're trying to elevate, it's all hands on deck, and you don't need any distractions and anything that's going to set that off track.
Absolutely. You can't have that kind of stuff when you're trying to beat those they're too good. They are just too good. And then speaking in that, the defense, sliding to the other side of the ball, it's kind of a mixed bag. It's like they gave up a lot of yards, but they didn't give up a lot of points. It's kind of the whole bend but don't break type of defense. And then a lot of it is on the back end, giving up a lot of passing yards. But again, only 20.6 points a game. I mean, that's not that many, especially in today's age in the NFL. So what are they doing? What have they done to kind of shore up, number one, the back end, but kind of shore up that defense to get even better, I guess, to cut down on the yardage part of it?
From a personnel standpoint, absolutely nothing. And the thing is, that's one of the things that I've been kind of getting on them about a little bit. But I like the fact, as much as I criticize it, because I think you can always add more. I like the fact that they're not trying to hedge their bets. They're saying, no, these guys are good enough. And the defense had a lot to do with them making that run down the stretch, by the way.
It did.
Right.
It did.
So Mike Caldwell comes from Tampa. It's his first year in the system. They believe in him, and I think he believes in the system. So what it is I think that they're thinking that the guys that we have just need to improve and get better. And it'll be their second year in the system. And all of that stuff is valid because as well as I do, it's all about that thing that we're talking about, chemistry and cohesion, and everybody knowing what the other guy's supposed to do. I think the one spot that they really want to improve is the spot where they really invested a lot in, and that's that off-ball linebacker, the kind of Mike linebacker. So the defense that they run, it's not a traditional where you have a middle linebacker. It's really what Tampa did with Levante David and Devin White. It's like they call them off-ball linebackers. So both of them sort of play like Mike linebackers, but they also sort of play like Wills, and they need to be able to run. So they drafted Devin Lloyd in the first round last year. He had some growing pains. And then they drafted Chad Muma in the third round in the exact same draft. What was thought to be a value pick at that time. And they're next to Foyolo. That spot was a bad spot. And then the nickel cornerback spot was a bad spot because they spend a lot of time in what is essential. It's weird. They run a 3-4 base, but their nickel is a 4-2-5.
Right.
So that slot guy and that slot corner, they had a long time figuring out who that is. They still don't know who it is, by the way.
Right.
They signed Darius Williams from the Super Bowl champion LA Rams last year. But everybody saw on tape he was better outside. Even though he's 5'9", 187, he's better outside than he is at slot. They still have to figure that out. They have to figure out who their nickel is. And I can tell you where teams are going to attack them. Teams are going to attack them running short, shallow crosses to see if that linebacker has discipline. And then they're going to also attack them at that nickel spot to see if that third corner can guard wide receivers. So that's still something that is left to be, that is up, that's up there in the air, whether or not they can do it or not. But I'm thinking that what they're banking on is more familiarity, another year in the system, another year of understanding Mike Caldwell.
Yeah. I mean, and it's a good thing, I think, too. A lot of times people will cut bait quickly on either a coach or players and say, you know what, we weren't as good as we want. We need to change something, change a whole lot of stuff. sometimes it's just like, you know what? We like the guys. We like the system. They just need to get better in the system. So there's a lot to be said for that, man. Couple real quick questions before I get you out of here, man.
Yeah.
One, anybody that the Jaguars right now that they have that fans maybe don't know that they need to get to know before the season or as the season progresses? Somebody that they may not be that familiar with right now.
All right, so I'm gonna give you two.
Okay.
I'm gonna give you the guy that was the first overall pick last year in Trayvon Walker. They dropped him in the coverage a lot. He is devastating against the run. He did not. At Georgia, they didn't ask him to do a lot of pass rush, and they had the greatest defense ever.
Right.
You know, the year before, they had guys who, like Jermaine Johnson was there, Ojulari was there, and they were getting sacks, but they lost 4 games, right?
Right.
So they went to a system where it was really gap and hole. Like, we're not going to let anybody scramble. We're going to let the linebackers, if they go outside of the pocket, the linebackers are going to chase him and chase them down. So the thing is I think you're going to see, now that he knows what the NFL is, I think you're going to really, really see him step up this year.
Okay.
He has a Myles Garrett physique and athleticism. The kid's 6'5", 275 when he got drafted. He's probably 280 now, but more svelte and more muscular, long arms, and ran a 4.52. So the thing is with that package, you're going to see him. You'll probably never see him get 15 sacks, but he could be a 10-sack guy he could be Cam Hayward, and that's what I'm thinking that he does. But the guy that you don't know is Andre Cisco, the free safety, the third-year player out of Syracuse. Let me tell you something. 6'1", 210, and runs like the wind. Really, really makes people pay for real estate. I call it a tax collector. And
all right.
he's one of those dudes. You played the game. Every now and then you watch tape, and the dude just always pops on tape. It's like, where the hell did he come from?
Right.
That's Andre Cisco, third-year guy out of Syracuse. Looks the part, plays the part, sometimes finds himself in a lot of single high, and he never, ever, ever gets beat. So I think Andre Cisco is going to be somebody that the fans around the league will appreciate as long as the Jaguars are able to put some W's up.
Gotcha. And real quick, I know it's early, before training camp, before everything, man, but I still got to ask you.
Yeah.
I got the Jags down at minimum 10 wins this year. Ooh. I don't think the division is as good. Obviously, I mean, let's just call it what it is. It's not going to be great. It's not going to be great. I know that they're familiar with each other, but I think they get 10 wins this year. It could be more. We don't know. That first place schedule may come back to bite them a little bit, but I think they get 10 wins this year, man. What do you think?
You know what's crazy? I went through this schedule and I did a show on Locked On Jaguars, and I probably got beside myself a little bit. I picked them to go 14-3. And
okay.
Right. So let me explain the reasons why. I think they'll be favored in every division game. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to win them all, because division games they lost to Houston and the Colts last year.
Right.
But I favor them in every division game. And then they play the AFC South. The AFC South got, new quarterbacks and a lot of uncertainty. So I think they'll be favored in those games. Well, that's 4 games in the AFC South, 6 in the division. That's 10.
Yeah.
That's 10.
Yeah.
Right? Out of those 10, out of the other 7, all they got to do is go 4-3. And I know that sounds crazy, because 14-3 is like, well, you must think they're going to win it all. It's just that when you take it game by game, you have to try to do it that way. The hardest thing in the NFL to do, and I always tell people this, is guys, people aren't going to win every game. I don't know if people realize this, but the Houston Texans, who picked first, went to overtime with the Chiefs.
Yes, they did.
The NFL is just that kind of league, man. And I know there's nothing you can really do about trying to get guys up for every game.
Right.
But when you go through these rosters, all of these rosters are full of guys who are All-Americans in college.
Absolutely.
They compete. And if you have a bad day, or if you don't come out there and play the way you're supposed to, you can get beat. So I did it that way, and I went 14-3. I think realistic, though. I think 12-5 is realistic. They were 9-8 last year, and I think they're at least 3 games better than that.
Gotcha. It makes a lot of sense. Like I said, the division's down, playing the NFC South. That's gotta help. I like what they got putting together, man. I really do. I think the Jaguars are set up to have a really fantastic season. I appreciate you, Tony, giving us the time today, man. I really do. We will 100% have you back whenever you have the time, my man.
And I'm going to make the time, man, because I absolutely enjoyed myself. I appreciate it, though.
No problem. Thank you. And again, everybody, thanks for joining Big B Sports Talk. Again, always like, follow, subscribe. We'll be back soon. Thank you.